Good evening. This is 2A Tonight, and I'm Mark Halperin.
I'm Adam Mockler.
And this is, I already said, Adam, welcome. Thanks for joining again. Adam Mockler, for those of you who don't know, from MeidasTouch, genius, leader of movements and visions and media, everything. Adam, how was your weekend?
It's going well. I just saw someone in the audience roll their eyes when you said genius, but I just got back from LA because I did this Jubilee shoot, right? Have you heard of Jubilee?
No idea what that
We,
is.
we
What
could
is
talk
Jubilee?
about it.
No,
They do
let's talk about it now.
Oh yeah, so they do these debates. I didn't do this, but they do one liberal versus 25 Trump
Oh,
supporters.
yeah, I have heard of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just did one of those. We did a roundtable debate. We talked about Kilmar Abrego Garcia. We talked about tariffs. We should jump into some of those topics tonight.
Yeah. Has that been posted already?
No, it comes out I think next week. There's a delay
Oh.
with editing.
And who were the 20 people you were debating?
No, we did a 2v2 debate. We didn't do the 1v20 yet. But
Okay.
someone I think I did well. We talked a lot
Yeah.
about Kilmar, and it's just that's a hard one for you guys to defend. It's pretty blatantly illegal, right?
Which is you guys?
I don't know about you.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean
Yeah.
to
Okay.
categorize you,
Yeah.
but I mean, it seems like the Trump admin wrongfully deported someone.
Oh, yeah. Well, we'll talk about that, even
Let's
though,
talk about it, please,
yeah, we
later
will. What else do you want to talk about? Let's queue up here some because we're co-hosting tonight. So, which topics besides immigration do you want to talk about?
Yeah, so genuinely, we could talk about Tom Homan a little bit because I
Yeah,
talk about that. I
yeah,
think that I read you quoted in an article today about Signal group chats. Am I
yeah.
remembering that right?
You do.
We
I
should
was
talk a
quoted.
little.
I was quoted right at the end.
Yeah, yep,
All
sweet.
right,
And then,
let's talk. I want to talk about that. That's good. We'll
yeah,
add that to the list. What else? What else do you want to talk about?
everything else is up to you. We can talk about Biden's age if you want to grill me a little bit, and then
Okay.
maybe the
Yeah.
tariffs. Let's do
Okay.
it.
Okay. Good topics. Our audience is growing, not as big as yours, but still growing. Not everybody knows who you are. So tell folks what you do for a living and what your political orientation is, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, my name is Adam. I'm obviously young. I work for a company named MeidasTouch. They're one of the largest liberal, they are the largest liberal platform on YouTube and Substack and the biggest podcast in America. We do a lot of, we say pro-democracy work. We interviewed Biden right before the election. We were one of his last interviews. And, you know, he's still decent. He's still a sharp dude. I would call myself center left. I'm pretty firmly center left. I reject far left woke progressivism. I'm a Gen Zer who does not like wokeness or woke scolding. I definitely don't like Trump either. So we'll get into that.
Okay. Thank you again for being here. So you mentioned the podcast ratings. You guys have a huge audience, and I'm not minimizing that at all.
Hmm.
I've got a new podcast coming out tomorrow. It's on the Megyn Kelly Network. It's called Next
Oh,
Up. Okay. And it hasn't been on yet. And I am the fourth rated news podcast in Apple Podcasts, number
that's
four.
that's really interesting. Yeah, it's
Okay.
there's
You guys are ahead of me. You guys are
hmm.
ahead of me, but I'm ahead of, who I'm ahead of? I just moved ahead today. I moved ahead of, what are those guys called? Pod Save America.
Oh, good shit. Congrats, man.
I,
Congrats.
and on overall, for all podcasts in the United States, I'm 27. You know who's 26?
No.
What's the name of that lady who was on Barstool who interviewed Kamala Harris?
Alex Cooper.
Alex Cooper. I'm one behind Alex Cooper, and it hasn't been on yet. How could that be? You know about the podcast world, Adam. How could that
On,
be?
honestly, I don't know. Now with MeidasTouch, the reason they're number one is because of pure volume.
Yeah,
Joe Rogan, it's the numbers are a little bit interesting because Joe Rogan puts out one episode every 3 days. Midas puts out 12 episodes a day. So
right.
saying they're number one, it's kind of like comparing apples and oranges. But I'm not. I honestly don't know how that works. But
Call
man,
call it up right now. Go to Apple Podcast
yeah.
ratings. Call that up and take a look. You'll back me up. Then look at all podcasts and then do news. So while you do that, welcome and everybody. Thank you for joining. Adam and I are co-hosting, so it's a kind of casual vibe. And I'm overdressed because I was doing something else earlier today, and I've got a dinner. Um, Most of the news today relates to. You see it?
Yeah. Next up with Mark Halperin.
Yeah, dude. How many times has this show been on?
I
Zero.
I don't know,
It's
honestly.
zero. It's never been on. It debuts tomorrow. My guest is Ted Cruz. Good get, but how could I be number? What number do you see me out there? What number?
Yeah, you're number five, I think, right now. I think the Bulwark just beat
Yeah,
you.
you're five.
But I'm still ahead of Pod Save America, right?
You're
Yeah,
ahead of Charlie Kirk.
Yeah.
I'm gonna text you later tonight and look into that. I
Yeah.
honestly don't know, but
Okay, but you're young. You can figure it out. I have
I'll
no
figure it
idea.
out, bro.
Call your friends
You're
at
gonna get to
Apple.
number two. You better be number two within the month.
Okay. Well, maybe when the show's on, it'll fall. Anyway, if you want to be in on this conversation, please raise your hand, Adam and I are here to address whatever concerns you have. If you're watching on the two-way platform, raise the yellow hand. If you're watching on two-way, not on two-way, but on YouTube or X, don't raise your hand. And please do not put smack in the chat. I can't emphasize enough how horrible I think the smack in the chat is. I don't want to speak negatively about people who put smack in the chat because that would be ironically wrong. I extend presumption of grace to them and I peace, love, and understanding, yada, yada, yada. But please don't put smack in the chat. It's that simple. Anyway, most of the issues that Adam raised are the issues that are in the news today. There was this big push at the White House today to talk about immigration. We'll talk about that. There was a lot of talk also at the White House today about issues that they care a lot about: women, men and women's sports, the media, the Civil Rights Division at the Justice Department, Pete Hegseth, Taylor Swift, the Eagles. Lots went on in the White House today. Even though Congress is back, not a lot of news off of Capitol Hill yet. So far, the Secretary of Treasury was on CNBC this morning. We talked about it on the morning meeting. Didn't make a lot of news. So most of the news that occurred today that we're going to talk about emanated from the White House. And it began, as Adam well knows, at 8:30 Eastern time, when Caroline Leavitt and Mr. Homan talked about the border. Here is number one, Mr. Homan, the border czar, talking about the president's accomplishments in 99 days on securing the border.
One of the numbers, and let me talk about a few numbers that are important to me. Under Biden administration, we averaged over 11,000 many days, over 12,000, even some days 15,000 illegal entrants in the United States. 15,000. You know what the number was last 24 hours? 178. 15,000 to 178. Unprecedented success. On an average day in the Biden administration, known gotaways. People we knew crossed the border because they're on video, drone traffic, or sensor traffic. Crossed the border, weren't apprehended, weren't fingerprinted, weren't vetted. Average day under Joe Biden, more than 1,800 gotaways. Yesterday, 38. 38 too many? We'll get that to zero. But we went from 1,800 to 38. And finally, that was said earlier, under the first 100 days, or it was actually January 20th to April 1st, last year, 184,000 illegal aliens were released into the United States. Under this administration, 9. 4 of them were material witnesses in a criminal investigation. We need them here to testify in a serious criminal trial. 4 was extreme medical condition. We couldn't return them because they were in such bad shape. And 1 was a humanitarian issue. This is unprecedented success.
Okay. Adam, first question, what do you think of those stats? Those seem right to you? Or are they impressive?
I honestly think they are impressive, but I think that's all, it's made worse by the fact that Trump is still underwater on immigration, according to a Fox News poll from this week. Did you see that one?
Yes, sir, I did.
He's underwater 1 point. And I think it's because of the due process conversation. When we see these big stories, like we could talk about the 2-year-old, which Tom Homan talked about as well, or about Kilmar, I think that's kind of overshadowing the honestly impressive numbers. Like, what else do you want me to say? The Biden administration for the first few years dropped the ball in immigration. Now Trump is taking office. I think he's doing better if I'm going to extend an olive branch. Now, I wish we could see him. People say that he may not be moving fast enough. I wish we could see them just allow a little bit more due process in some of these cases because they admitted to the administrative error. Sorry, I'm just going to keep going back to that.
No, that's okay. That's okay. First, I hear Republicans say all the time that the reason the Democrats under Biden-Harris let so many people in is because they want to make them citizens who vote Democratic. I've never bought that argument. But why do you think the Biden-Harris administration had the policies they did initially on the border?
Yeah, just to debunk that argument, I challenge anybody who believes that to find one Democratic politician, either a House or a representative or a senator or somebody running for office who says that they want to legalize people so they can get more votes. Nobody has ever claimed that.
Well, but the Republicans say they don't say it aloud because it's a secret scheme. I don't think that proves it. I would say find me anyone who came here illegally and got to be a citizen and voted for and became a reliable Democratic voter. They might exist, but I don't think they exist in huge numbers.
The idea that like the average Hispanic person wants to come over here and wouldn't be more socially aligned with Republicans on
Well,
any
okay,
any
so
given issue.
all right, so we shared the straw man. Why did they have the policy they did? And I don't think it's an academic question because it speaks to the values of the party and the vision. Because they saw what was happening. They said, let's open the border. I mean, they did, right?
Did they open
They
the border
basically
though?
said,
What's
let's
your
open.
what? How do they open the border?
They changed a bunch of policies that effectively open the border. I mean, we know what the numbers are. Every Democrat I know who lives in California and Texas would say this is a disastrous policy. So they chose a policy that was a disaster, and then they didn't change it for several years. So I'm asking you, if you have any idea, speculation or reporting, what was their motive?
I don't know if there was a nefarious motive so much as Donald Trump came in swinging with a really strong immigration argument in 2016 to 2020. And the Democratic Party for a while kind of felt beholden to some of the farthest left activists at the time,
Right.
whether it's like trans issues or immigration. So maybe some of our leaders were too weak to take a strong stance on immigration in fear that they would become too much like Trump. I know that a lot of people will have nefarious theories about why the Democrats were weak on immigration, such as they want to boost their voter numbers or whatever, like we were saying. But I genuinely think we just didn't have a strong message due to, I don't know, being kind of weak and disorganized. You see that right now, and that allowed Trump to come into this vacuum and take over.
Right. Okay. Due process. And again, I know there are people going to say, why are you talking about immigration? Why are you talking about what a disaster the tariff policy is? Well, the White House today talked a lot about immigration,
Yeah.
and it's an important issue still. And these due process issues, you and others I know are asserting that the reason the president's approval rating related to immigration is down is because of due process. I'm still skeptical about that. I wish the country cared a lot about due process, but let's talk about this, and we can talk about some of the specific cases if you want. But in general, there's been through law and practice a fair amount of due process afforded to people who come to the country illegally. They're allowed various types of hearings and administrative processes, and often because of the backlog, they use that reality to basically assimilate into the country. And so part of why we have 20 million or so people here illegally is because the due process was too cumbersome to actually process people to remove them, right? So people think they're entitled to some due process, but just speaking generally, if someone's here illegally, and let's say they've committed a crime in the United States, in addition to coming here illegally, let's say they've committed some crime. Just broadly speaking, what would you think is fair to have for them to be allowed before they're removed from the country?
Not every immigrant needs a court hearing or trial. JD Vance said, oh, you guys want 15 million trials. Right. That's not even what due process means. It's just the ability to present your side of the case before being kicked out of the country. And Article 5 of the Constitution does explicitly say all persons get due process. All persons are granted a due process, right. Not just citizens. The Supreme Court has upheld that time and time again, that all persons in the United States are afforded some level of due process. Now, I don't like the straw man that JD Vance tweeted out a week ago where he says Democrats want 15 million court hearings. No, but I think in the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, if he was able to give his argument, which is I have a withholding order of removal given in 2019 when Trump was president, then that wouldn't have happened. They wouldn't be in such a mess. Now, there's also something that Republicans keep doing, and sorry, I'm not even trying to say it to you, just there's something that people keep doing that you aren't doing. That's happened in my Jubilee debate. They go, dude, why are you so in love with defending criminals? Why do Democrats love MS-13 gang members? And even Tom Homan himself does this. I'm pretty sure Caroline Leavitt does this all the time, and it's so intellectually dishonest because no Democrat has gone out and said that we love MS-13 gang members. We've repeatedly said if there's somebody in this country with a withholding order of removal, they should have the chance to show that. Just have the chance to give your argument before you are deported.
Right. So sometimes we talk about, well, it's principled, it's the right thing to do, but it's politically, dumb, right? That's the thing people say. Isn't it both the right thing to do and the politically smart thing to do to say there's indications that this guy is a horrible person. There's indications that he hit the woman he was married to. There's indications that he was a gang member, that he engaged in trafficking. We don't know that for sure, but there are indications. Our fidelity to the Constitution is so strong that even though this appears to be a bad guy, we still are saying for the sake of this country's values, he deserves some kind of recognition that he was wrongfully deported, and to give him what the American system calls for. Not say, Maryland man, bring him home, not speak of him in positive terms. Wouldn't that be both the morally right thing to do and the good politics for the party, or no?
I guess, I mean, the Maryland man doesn't matter as much. Like, it doesn't matter if he's a bad person or a good person. Like you said, it doesn't matter if he beat his wife. He still gets, I don't know if the Democratic Party was really lionizing him as much as Republicans were saying that Democrats were lionizing him. Like,
I don't know, that dewy-eyed look in the senator from Maryland's eyes. He seemed like he went down there and he's like joking around with him. I understand.
What has Kilmar done that you think would like constitute, maybe not you, but he was in CCOT for a while. Is there anything, does hitting his wife mean he should be sent to CCOT with no due process when there's a withholding order? Someone said to me, like during this debate, he's an illegal alien. That's all, like he's an illegal alien, point blank. It doesn't matter. He came here illegally, but he had a withholding order of removal from a judge. You can't just violate the law like that blatantly. I don't care if he hit his wife or not.
What if they'd sent him to Portugal?
Oh, that's fine. That's not illegal.
Yeah. Yeah. So they say again, a mistake to send him to El Salvador, but now El Salvador won't get him back. Now, obviously, it'd be nice if they actually asked for him back rather than pretending they can't get him back. But well, let me ask you about this. And this is what the president said to Time Magazine. I think it was the Time Magazine interview. He basically said mistakes are going to happen. There's nothing perfect. We're trying to correct a massive problem caused by the previous administration. We're trying to numerically deport people who shouldn't be here, the worst of the worst, but we're also trying to send a signal to people, don't come here. And so, again, I'm just telling you what the argument that they make is, there were tons of mistakes made on the inflow, right? Tons of mistakes, and people got here who shouldn't get here. If there's some mistakes made on the outflow, the president's attitude seems to be, we can live with that. What would you say to that?
The consequence of that mistake is somebody being sent to CCOT for life, which, like, the Salvadoran government always says CCOT is known.
Well, I believe he's no longer in CCOT. I believe they moved him to a different facility.
Because he was such a high-profile case, but imagine we didn't have all the media attention on him. He would be spending the rest of his life in CCOT. And once you create a new class of people where you strip them of due process, you deprive them of any sort of due process, then you can put anybody in that bucket. You can deport Mark Halperin because he has no ability to show that you, like, if you had no ability to show the withholding order of removal, that's a scary thing. And I'm not saying that, of course, every immigrant needs a court case, but
well, but if they don't get a court case, what is it you're saying they get?
Due process is defined as like the ability to give your side of the story, and not even in a court, but like Kilmar didn't even have the chance to show his court papers that he had a withholding order of removal.
Yeah. But again, I'm just having the kind of conversation co-anchors have, which is what we are tonight. You call him Kilmar like he's your pal.
That's just a name. Come on. I'm not.
No,
saying
I'm serious.
my pal.
Well, but why are you calling him by his first name? He's a thug who entered the country illegally and who there's a lot of indications is a bad guy.
Dude, if he's such a thug and such a prominent MS-13 gang member, why did the Trump admin, why did a judge let him go in 2019?
I don't know. I don't know because I haven't interviewed the judge, so I don't know. I mean, I take your point,
do you think
but it's not the only data point. It's not the only data point, though.
Do you think Kilmar having a work permit?
Dude, stop calling him by his first name. Say this thug. Call him this thug. You wouldn't call.
What evidence is there that he's a thug?
Well, his wife filed a statement saying that he hit her on a regular basis. She was afraid of him. He was pulled over working for a guy who I believe was convicted or at least accused of human trafficking. I don't want to engage in McCarthyism. So he just doesn't seem convicted. He doesn't seem like father of the year.
Wait, has the El Salvador government or the U.S. government convicted him of anything?
Not to my knowledge. Let's talk about the judge in Wisconsin. Okay, So I don't believe the facts are in dispute. And again, I find this topic to be like your friend Kilmar, to be a great Rorschach test for red and blue. It seems like the judge, in order to keep the federal authorities from taking this gentleman into custody, helped him escape. That seems like what happened. I haven't heard anybody dispute that. That's what the federal government says, and that's what she was arrested for. So so I hear people on the left saying this is intimidation. It's a police state. It's a violation of the separation of powers. The judge seems like she did something pretty bad. Now, just as I say, I said this morning, they should have waited 2 days to figure out the women who were here illegally and sent deported with their kids, who minor kids who are citizens. I think they should have waited a couple days before they did that and did some fact finding. Maybe instead of arresting the judge, they should have called her and they said, "You're going to be charged. Come on in." But they wanted to make an example. They don't want state and local judges all over the country aiding and abetting the escape of people here illegally, who, by the way, were charged in the state court with some pretty serious charges too. So do you believe the arrest of that judge was a good thing, a bad thing, or no point of view?
It seems like the judge messed up. It seems like the judge should have been arrested. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Sorry, I did that big windup. I thought I was going to have to fight with you about it, but yeah.
No, I'm not going to die on that hill. But really
Yeah.
quickly, can you admit the Trump admin illegally deported someone?
They said they did.
They said they did. And can
Yeah,
you
but-
admit that they're defying a Supreme Court order to facilitate the return? A 9/0 Supreme Court order.
I mean, I have a very low threshold on this because I think the real danger is they're violating court orders. So I
You
say
think if someone-
yes.
think
I
if
say
someone
yes.
Beats
And they
their
shouldn't.
wife, it's justifiable to deport them with no due process? You obviously don't
Well,
believe that,
well,
right? Even if he is a thug?
Well, again, they said they did it by mistake. I don't know whether they did. They said they did. Here's what I think. What I think is mushy and poetry. It's not legal and rigorous. I think that the president has a point when he says mistakes are going to be made. There's not going to be nothing's a perfect process. I think that if you went and looked at what president was nicknamed the deporter in chief?
Obviously Obama, yeah.
Obama. Okay. I think if you went and looked at every deportation that was conducted under the name of Barack Obama, you'd find some cases where you and I would say, that was a little fast.
Yeah, remember that
would-
9/0 Supreme Court ruling under Obama that said that they illegally deported someone and that they need to facilitate the return? Me neither.
Again, the press wasn't fly-specking them as much. He deported a lot of people. And I'm just telling you, without having to examine the case files, I bet you some of those families were upset. I bet you some of those people were deported. Well, I know, go back and look at the left. The reason they call him the deporter in chief was they said he was deporting people who shouldn't have been deported. And he was deporting people without sufficiently examining their cases. See what I'm saying? Like, I don't even need to do the reporting to know. I can't say the cases are exactly comparable, but
Yeah.
I would bet you that if the press and you, I say with respect, fly-spec'd all the Obama deportations, you'd find some that didn't have what you would call sufficient due process. I bet
but
you.
I don't-
And I bet you some people were mistakenly deported. I would bet you.
I don't believe the press began to fly spec this until a judge was like, yo, this is pretty messed up. I'm pretty sure you
Well-
just deported someone.
Well, that's because, well, it's an interesting question. I don't know the question. I wonder if my dad knows. See if my dad knows, because he's on and he knows a lot about this stuff. He dropped off. I wonder, I don't know, were there legal cases brought against the Obama deportations in individual cases? Seems like there must have been.
Do you think he would have facilitated the return, Obama?
Well, again, they said they did it by, you mean if they made a mistake and then,
If
yeah.
Obama had made a mistake, would he
he
have
would,
facilitated
he
the
would,
return?
he would. But let's table it in the American sense, not the British sense. In the British sense, if you say table, it means put it on the table and discuss it. In the American sense, same expression, it means let's stop talking about it for now. But I want to do some research, and I want to find out if the left challenged specific Obama deportations and went to federal court and got orders. Now, maybe in your conception of things, if that happened, the Obama administration followed the law and tried to bring them back. But I bet you that there were some cases that you would say revealed by judges' rulings that the Obama administration did not pay sufficient deference to due process in every single case, and that the reason we don't know about it is because the press didn't cover it like it was the end of the world. That's my guess.
I will grant you, I read an ACLU article from 2013 that said Obama was kind of speed running these deportations. But my main problem with the Trump admin, then we can move on, is they're playing this weird game of heads I win, tails you lose, where they're saying that a lot of people can't file habeas petitions before they're deported because it's premature or they don't have enough time or they need something in particular. But then after someone's deported, they say, oh, sorry, you also can't get a habeas petition now because we don't have the jurisdiction to bring you back because you're in El Salvador. So it's kind of this weird game of heads I win, tails you lose. No matter what happens, you're screwed. And I just want to go back to what I was saying. Once you create a class of people where you deprive them of due process, even if it's a mistake or an accident, then you refuse to bring them back. It sets a dangerous precedent, especially when Trump is openly floating deporting homegrown citizens. Like, listen, not you, I'm not talking to you, but like when people are saying that Democrats are freaking out about this like lack of due process thing, and then we look at the president in the Oval Office saying that homegrown should be deported, which he clearly said, you understand why it's a little bit alarming?
I do. And if he did it, I'd be super alarmed. But he says all sorts of stuff that he doesn't do. And I try to reserve my concern for things that he really does. And I'll say this, and I'll try to choose my words carefully because while I love to make news, I don't like to be attacked for things I don't really mean. I am a staunch civil libertarian, and I have great concern if the president is disregarding court orders. I have also extreme intellectual and attitudinal sympathy towards people who say people in this country here illegally, they're not entitled to have more of our tax dollars wasted on them for the niceties of due process. I understand why tens of millions of people think that because they're not citizens of this country, and they're asking us to spend money on judges and administrators and plane tickets to send them out of here. They shouldn't be here. I have sympathy for that point of view. Not saying I agree with it, but I understand it. I understand why they feel that way.
Yeah, I can understand it.
All right. What do you think of Stephen Miller?
Broadly not a fan. He seems more radical on immigration than needed.
Yeah. So here's Stephen Miller. This is number 3, talking to Link Lauren today at the White House about liberals and immigrants.
Does Biden have blood on his hands for Laken Riley, Jocelyn Ngari, and all these people who've lost their lives at the hands of illegal migrants? And then you also have fentanyl, which is ravaging our communities. Friends of mine have died from fentanyl. So do you blame the Biden administration? Do they have blood on their hands?
Of course they do, but not just the Biden administration. Of course the Biden administration does, but also all of their enablers do. Right? All of the radical left immigration groups and attorneys and NGOs who aided and abetted and supported the invasion, all the Democrat politicians in Congress, like Hakeem Jeffries, who aided, abetted, and supported the invasion, and Chris Murphy, and everyone in the media who knowingly lied and covered up about that invasion for 4 years. They all share in the atrocity, in the calamity. They all have blood on their hands and on their conscience and on their souls. And nothing they ever say or do will ever earn them forgiveness for that because of just how severe those violations were and how many people have died and suffered as a result. That's between them and their maker. But they'll be getting no forgiveness from me, I can promise you.
All right, Adam, what do you think of that?
First of all, never in my life have I asked a question that loaded. But regarding his answer, I think that, I mean, he's just a liar. He's using pretty extreme rhetoric. Is there blood on Hakeem Jeffries' hands because he aided and embedded an invasion of our country? I just don't believe it. I don't believe that. I mean, we know that Stephen Miller is a liar. Like, the Trump admin is also lying about the Supreme Court case. Not to go back to that, but I mean, I don't trust anything Stephen Miller says. I don't believe that any Democrat has blood on their hands. I think that's insane rhetoric.
Yeah.
I mean, didn't Langford draft a bill that Trump told Republicans to shoot down?
Yeah, but I mean, Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid killed immigration reform for decades. So, I mean,
that's fair. But when we did have a chance to put something on the table, drafted up by Langford, it feels like Trump kind of like delayed.
No, Democrats had plenty of chances to put a bill on, and they wouldn't because they couldn't get a path to citizenship for people here illegally, and they refused to move a bill without that, even though it was largely unpopular. So I'm not forgiving what Trump did with the Langford bill. I'm just saying Democrats did the exact same thing for a long time.
Yeah,
for a long time when they had majority control.
Yeah, I detest that. I just think that when you put the onus solely on Democrats for having a messed up immigration, he's not just putting the onus on Democrats. That's like soft wording for me. He literally said Democrats are aiding and abetting an invasion with blood on their hands.
Well, they did leave the border open for 3 years.
You just said that Republicans obstructed as well, though.
Well, they did, but they weren't in the White House and leaving the border open for 3 years. I mean, that's just a fact. The Republicans have never done it. I'm not saying that Republicans have done nothing wrong. I'm just saying what happened, and part of why Trump won the election, is because for 3 years the Democrats opened the border and left it open, even when they were told, including by other Democrats, please close the border.
I still deny the framing that the border was open. And I know you said earlier it effectively was open, but
was
wasn't the problem
effectively
asylum
open.
seeking?
There were lots of problems, but one problem is they got rid of lots of policies that the previous administration had put in place that had helped to close the border down. Now,
Yeah, I
people come in for years under Donald Trump too, but many more came in under Joe Biden. And you heard we played earlier the statistics. Lots of people came in as a direct result of a change in policy that their critics said to them, including Democrats, don't make these policy changes.
Yeah, and the first thing I conceded when we hopped on is that Democrats were absolutely weak on immigration. That left a vacuum open for Trump to come in and do this. But I still don't think the Democrats have blood on their hands. That's
Well, I didn't endorse that.
Oh no, I was saying that regarding Stephen Miller. Yeah.
I love having you on. I can talk to you about anything. I want to talk to you about one more topic, and I want to bring people in to ask you questions. But I want to talk about one more topic. This guy, J.B. Pritzker, governor of Illinois, spoke in New Hampshire last night. He seems to be being very aggressive about running for president. Here is Stephen Miller, your favorite, number 6, talking about J.B. Pritzker, very aggressive rhetoric in New Hampshire last night.
Have a few questions.
Stephen, Illinois Governor Pritzker just called for mass protests and disruption, saying Republicans cannot know peace, while Trump's border crossings are down 95% and ICE is locking up 800 criminals. Is Pritzker inciting insurrection, and will DOJ take action?
Well, what I would say is that his comments, if nothing else, clearly could be construed as inciting violence. So President Trump survived 2 assassination attempts against his life. Of course, there's been many more credible threats against President Trump and his family and associates. We've, of course, seen the spate of left-wing domestic terrorism all across this country. By the way, the destruction of property sits directly adjacent to attacks on humans and physical attacks. In other words, once you tolerate and once you allow for attacks on property, you're just a step away from people throwing Molotov cocktails into people's homes. And you've even seen some, I think one example of a formerly prominent Washington Post journalist who seemed to be celebrating the murder of a healthcare CEO, right? Health insurance CEO. And that's the point we've reached in this country, where people are engaging in rhetoric and behavior that puts the law.
Just it seems like Governor Pritzker's gotten under the skin of some people. Who are you excited about as a potential presidential nominee in 2028? Is Pritzker on the list of people you're excited about or not?
Really quickly, just to lib out. Bro, Stephen Miller, no shot Stephen Miller is clutching his pearls about rhetoric coming from the left when Trump is the most divisive. Like I know everyone in chat's going to absolutely hate this. I promise you, Donald Trump, the way that he speaks about, didn't he call for Mark Milley to get the death penalty? He has nicknames for every single person, and didn't he do that?
Yes, the pearl clutching and the feigning couch stuff. I have no patience.
And if you don't believe me, look up Donald Trump calls for death penalty for former General Mark Milley. Trump is so incredibly divisive. Okay,
yes, he's an incendiary. Who are you? Well, let me start with Pritzker. Are you excited about the prospect of Pritzker being the Democratic nominee in 2028?
I live in Illinois, so he could be good. I think he's decently charismatic. I think he's good on camera. I think that was a pretty benign comment that Republican politicians shouldn't know a moment of peace. He wasn't saying like a Republican grandma should get their door knocked down. He was saying Republican representatives should be held accountable. I like Pritzker. I don't think AOC should run, even though it seems like she's sort of soft launching a countrywide tour and a campaign.
Who are you excited about?
Who am I excited about? Honestly, nobody. But you have to remember, in 2020 or in 2004, nobody knew that Obama was going to sweep the nation 4 years from now. Like, and remember in 2012,
I got to tell you, people say that, okay?
Yeah.
No one knew that in 2004. Well, from the time he was at Harvard at the Law Review, people were talking about him as a once in a generation political talent. Okay.
Maybe better.
Well, and in 2004, he was made the keynote speaker at the convention.
Yeah.
So I mean, that was 8 years before. That was 4 years before he ran. A full 4 years before he ran, and a decade after he was touted as a once in a generation talent. So I'm not saying there won't be a strong nominee, but what I'm saying is when people say, "Well, no one knew," well, actually, yeah, people knew. People knew Barack Obama was destined for greatness.
Maybe a better example is 2012, Republicans wrote a postmortem that they need to move to the center on immigration. Then 4 years later, Trump came and took the party by storm.
Right. But again, Trump was on the national stage known as people didn't take him seriously as a politician, but he was on the national stage. This is the big metric that I keep telling people you got to look at. No one gets the nomination or elected president without a lot of time on the national stage. It just doesn't happen. And
problems.
Yes, although she was vice president, so she had time on the national stage.
Most
and
people can't
international
even say her
stage.
name right. Most people don't know anything about her.
Yeah, that's true. All right, last question for you, and then we're going to bring folks in again. Raise your hand if you want in on the conversation. I just want to talk to you about tariffs a little bit. Are you seeing, as you survey the country, are you already seeing the impact of tariffs in a way that's deleterious to the American interest, or is it just something you're braced for?
I think a lot of small business owners have cited a lot of unpredictability and confusion when trying to import things. The biggest story was a toy manufacturer in New York because Fox News covered that. But yeah, a lot of small business owners are about to get smacked really hard by the tariffs.
About to.
It seems like it's already happening, but what we've heard is that there's a 30-day delay when the supply chain, like right now, the supply chains seem to be kind of freezing as we head into the 30-day mark from Liberation Day. And I just want to say all of this is with no clear end goal from the Trump admin. I've done a bunch of these tariff debates, and Trump supporters are always like, one day they'll say he's trying to reshore manufacturing, but then the next day they're saying it's actually a negotiation tactic for other countries, which necessarily would undercut your domestic manufacturing. But then the next day they say he's actually trying to abolish the income tax completely and rely on imports to tax. But then that means we're not reshoring manufacturing as much as he wants. I don't understand how all of these can simultaneously be the goal. And it's worrying me that he doesn't have a solid end goal. Like he's blinked multiple times with China.
So I think there's two things you can say about their various explanations, besides what you're saying, which is it's just nutsy cuckoo. One is those things can be sequentially true, right? We may want to take in a lot of tariff money early while we're bringing stuff back on shore. So I don't think there's a total conflict. But the other is what Scott Bessent says, basically, which is the president's a great negotiator. He's just trying to freak everybody out and confuse everybody, and then he's going to swoop in for the kill. I'm not predicting that he will, but he might. He might get some good bilateral deals because he's thrown so many different shaped tacks on the carpet.
If Trump wants to take in a lot of tariff money off the bat, why did he, number one, make an exemption for Chinese electronics and computers, but then he also he removed his Liberation Day tariffs? Wouldn't he want to collect as much revenue off the bat? It just doesn't seem coherent.
Well, it's definitely not coherent.
And can I say one more thing regarding some of these deals? I think the first one they said they're going to cut is with South Korea, but that's a load of BS. Since like 2014, we've had a deal with South Korea where we've had effectively zero tariffs whatsoever with them. And what Trump is doing is he's shredding that up. He's trying to put it back together and act like he did it. And I saw someone make a good point. The original deal went through Congress, so it lasted through multiple administrations. This new deal is only going to be through the duration of Trump's administration. It's effectively the same deal as before. It makes America a less predictable ally on the global stage. So I don't know how Trump is claiming he's about to take a massive win with South Korea when he's about to just kind of tape up the exact deal we had with no ratification through Congress.
Well, I want to see what the deal is, but you might be right. But let's see what it is. Let's see what it is. All right, let's go. Lindsay, who promised to come back, and she has. Lindsay, welcome in. Lindsay, you're old enough to babysit for Adam, aren't you?
What?
Like, not now, but I mean, like, at one point, you would be old enough to babysit for Adam, or no? You're about the same age? I don't know.
So, like, come on, you're calling me old?
No. I'm calling. I'm just trying to
swing and a miss. It was a swing and a miss, Mark. I got the joke.
Never mind. Lindsay, welcome in.
Probably.
Welcome in. Thank you for joining. You're in South Carolina.
I'm in South Carolina. 3-time Trump voter.
Yeah.
Lean towards just kind of the pure MAGA, America First agenda. And I actually really wasn't going to raise my hand, but I heard Adam, you say, and this has been kind of on probably everyone's mind, that is similar, mindedness to me. But you said that MAGA or Republicans, it's just a talking point that we say Democrats like criminals. And you kept talking about Garcia, and Mark said something about, stop calling him Kilmer, his first name, call him a thug. And you said, what has he been convicted of? Well, a few things. One, we were called Nazis, MAGA supporters, for the last few years. We were called many other things. I wasn't convicted of anything. So you don't have to be convicted to call someone a thug. You can look at their record. But it's not just Garcia, Anthony has like what? They have like $900,000 they raised for him, and he stabbed a kid and killed him. George Floyd, Luigi and Mangione. I'm trying to think of someone that you guys prop up or support that is actually a good person. Like you guys don't stand for, not you, sorry, your leaders in your party don't stand for an 11-year-old kid with cancer. I'm sure that you would. So I'm not aiming that at you, but I'm just, who is out there that you guys actually, it's like a cause that you guys have stood up and.
Can I ask a question?
It's a great question. Now Adam's going to ask you one. Go ahead, Adam.
Well, I want to respond to your question with a question. Is it fair if I call, okay, so I'll say this. I will call Kilmar Abrego Garcia a thug if you say that someone with 34 felony convictions who's been found liable of sexual assault is also a thug. So if Kilmar hasn't been convicted, does having 34 felony convictions make you a thug?
Do I think Donald Trump is a thug because of the 34 convictions?
If you're going to use what somebody's done, whether it's being held liable for sexual assault or convictions, then yeah, does that meet your standard?
I mean, the only things I know about him are what we've kind of seen, other than him being a Maryland man, which has been repeated over and over. He's been twice in court. He said he was worried about a rival gang. Why are you worried about a rival gang if you're not in a gang? There's several things. Two things. Trump has a whole record of good things. So no, I don't actually care about any of those 34 counts. They were all bogus. I mean, there might be something to one of them, but
I mean, his own lawyers handpicked the jury.
But that's fine if you do. I just don't think he.
I don't know if I'd call Trump a thug, but I mean, his own.
You're talking about a president of the United States and illegal, someone who allegedly committed crimes.
Yeah.
Which one was convicted of 34 counts? Trump's own lawyers handpicked that jury through the process of voir dire, and now people are saying the entire trial was rigged when a jury of Trump's peers convicted him. And what was Kilmar convicted of? You guys can't say anything. I'm saying Kilmar because I've just been doing a bunch of research about this. He's not my friend or whatever. I see Mark laughing over there. But I'm telling you, Abrego Garcia had a bond hearing in 2019, and the Trump admin gave him, not the Trump admin, but an immigration judge, he got a work permit and was able to go back and work for 6 years. So if this dude is an MS-13 wife-beating gang member, then why did the Trump admin allow him to walk around? Or we don't know,
but you could say they didn't know at the time all those things, presumably. But
or maybe a bond hearing where a disgraced
cop. Hold on,
I just
down to El Salvador.
I want to just try to focus, if we can, Lindsay and Adam, on the question I think you were asking, if I understood it correctly, which is this. One of my goals for this show and this platform is to try to eliminate the sources of tension that are really just kind of like spiraled out of control, right? And to have deeper understanding on both sides. So one thing, Adam, that I know you know because you're very observant, very smart, Lindsay speaks for tens of millions when she says your party glorifies and celebrates a lot of bad people for the sake of some principle, sometimes hard to discern, sometimes easier to discern, and that it would be more comforting to them if you all did not praise people simply because of the symbolism. Is that fair, Lindsay?
That's fair. I guess my question was, is there someone that you guys, something happens to Tesla when Shapiro's house got, set ablaze. Everyone was out there, senators, congressmen, condemning everything.
Right. The Tesla thing's a great example, right? There are not a lot of Democrats denouncing it, and people in the media cover it like it's a spectacle rather than it's a terrorist attack, which is the way they would cover it if these things were happening to someone on the left. So are you outraged at the Tesla attacks? I think you probably are.
So you don't think Democratic politicians are condemning political violence when it comes to Tesla? And I think
maybe one other person.
Yeah, I didn't hear very many do it.
Okay, so I'm going to give an answer without pivoting. And Lindsay, sorry for going debate mode on you with my first answer. I didn't mean to pose a question back.
That's fine.
It's all right, totally fine.
I'm not going to pivot and talk about Nancy Pelosi's husband getting the shit beat out of him, and I'm not going to bring any of this stuff up or any of the insane rhetoric. I will say that I think our party does have a proclivity to sometimes latch on to figures over the symbolism. I'm not going to sit here and defend George Floyd, but do I think that there is some downstream systemic racism? Yes. And then what was the main question again? One more time. Sorry.
I mean, I'm just kind of looking for someone that you guys have, like, your party and the leaders of your party have gotten out in the streets and shouted for, that was not a alleged or a convicted criminal, or, you know, one of a million other things that are not on the high side of, you know, someone that, you know, survived a, you know, like like, let's say Jocelyn Ungari's family and sort of like that thing. So where is
Trayvon
someone
Martin?
you guys have supported?
What did Trayvon Martin do?
Hands up. No, so okay. That's your answer, is Trayvon Martin?
Is that a bad one? Wasn't he like 16 with a bag of Skittles?
I think there's a debate over that one a little bit, but I mean,
Yeah.
that's an answer, I guess.
Really? Wait a minute. You think Trayvon Martin, so Zimmerman was justified in shooting Martin? He took a bag of Skittles out of his pocket, Adam. Why did I read that from chat? Sorry.
What
I
did
don't
you
know.
say?
Confused me. We're not going to solve that, and I didn't cover it enough at the time to know. So, Lindsay, thank you. I don't feel this is a perfect exchange, but I found it helpful and interesting, and grateful to you always for coming on.
Thank you, Lindsay. I'm sorry.
All right. No need to be sorry. We're doing our best. This is live. You're co-hosting and color commentating. All right, Mr. Wells, welcome in. After you unmute, tell folks who don't know where you are what's on your mind. For Adam Mockler.
Good evening, Mark and Adam. Anthony Wells. I live in the capital of South America and Central America and the Caribbean, aka Miami. So immigration is very important to me because my wife was born and raised in Venezuela, and she's a nationalized citizen. So, Adam, when you talk about due process means you have to go through the court system, and these people who are illegal are here illegally. So they've broken the law. Don't look away like that, Adam. Come on.
No, I'm listening.
He's listening. He's listening. He's multitasking, but he's listening.
You know, the due process is they go to an immigration court, which the system is broken. You have over 15 million illegal immigrants in the country. It's broken. And yes, they sent him to the wrong country, which is wrong. But he had not one, but I think two issues where they were supposed to deport him. And we don't know if it was a Trump administrator or a holdover from Obama. And I'm going to go back to Mark. I voted for Obama twice, you know, back in 2008 and 2012. But then I think, Mark, you had me on a couple weeks ago where we talked about tariffs, and I brought up about Italy and wine and stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm also a registered Democrat, but the party lost me in 2016 when they split the delegates so that Bernie Sanders wouldn't win. And so that right there caused the rift. But deportation, I don't think, yes, it was wrong they sent him to his home country because he claimed he was a gang member. So, you know, when you come, you try to file for
it wasn't wrong, it was illegal.
Okay, it's illegal.
Say the Trump admin illegally deported him. And you're also implying that due process necessarily means a whole court hearing. There are non-judicial ways of due process. There are ways to protect people's rights without putting them through a complete court hearing.
But immigration, you have to go through the process, right? And the process is going through an immigration court hearing.
He did already go through an immigration court hearing.
And then he lied, because if you're going to claim asylum, people claim asylum. If they claim that they're also a gang member, that's a strike 3. You're out.
He didn't claim asylum. He didn't claim asylum. A withholding order of removal is a few steps above asylum.
Adam, even worse.
No, it's better.
Right? No, it's not. He was here illegally. He was, you know, several charges against him. And yes, you know, Trump's team sent him back to his home country. They should have sent him to Gitmo. You know, would Gitmo work? Him living in a tent in Cuba?
If he got due process, if he got a proper notice, if he got the proper, yes, then that's fine.
You don't fight, Adam. You don't fight. These people run.
Wait. What evidence is there that he's an MS-13 gang member? Can you tell me the evidence right now? Where was he convicted? El Salvador said 0 evidence. Did the U.S. government provide any evidence? Was there any conviction?
Okay.
There was no conviction. But
okay, so Anthony is currently basing his argument. He just said he wants to send Kilmore to Gitmo. And when I pressed him and said, what evidence do you have? You don't have any. Isn't that a little bit eerie?
Didn't he claim on his restraining order from being deported that he was a gang member and he felt his life would be threatened if he went back to his home country?
He felt his life would be threatened because his mom's shop was being threatened by a rival gang, not because he was a gang member. That was never demonstrated. Actually, did the El Salvador government present any evidence that he was MS-13?
I do not know.
Did they, Mark?
I don't believe anybody's presented evidence. There's lots of.
Isn't that a little bit eerie that you guys are saying he should be sent to Gitmo or CCOT?
But you want to go through due process. So due process is going to a court.
No, it doesn't mean going through a court. A due process can be as simple as getting a notice in the mail.
You wouldn't be able to find him, Adam. Come on, let's be realistic.
Wait, say that again? I didn't hear that.
Let's be realistic. You wouldn't find him because a lot of these people who showed up at the border, they were like, here's a piece of paper, here's your court date. Look at the statistics. How many of them show up for that court date?
Okay, wait. Kilmar.
No, wait. Look at
listen. Kilmar Abrego Garcia checked in at the top of every year with the immigration forces. He checked in at the top of every year. He was known for being right on time. He actually just did it in January. So the idea that he would run is absurd. You guys are arguing. You guys have both conceded. Sorry, and I'm not really going after you, Mark. You've conceded, Anthony, that you have no evidence from either the U.S. government or the El Salvador government that he's MS-13. You've repeatedly said that he didn't get a conviction.
I think you'd have to investigate what happened in Tennessee.
That's called due process. Thank you. You just made my argument.
But Adam, see, I don't agree because he's in the country illegally. We don't need to convict him of any crime to expel him
investigate
from the
what
country.
happened after.
No.
That's all right.
No, he's here illegally.
He's here illegally. If he can't go to El Salvador, they should have sent him someplace else.
Okay, him being here illegally doesn't mean he's deprived of due process. Article 5 of the Constitution says.
Adam, no, you're dying on that hill.
Wait. Do you think that illegal immigrants deserve due process, Anthony?
To a certain point.
What do you mean to a certain point?
Which means, they have certain, as you said, the Constitution and the Supreme Court says people have rights. You don't have to be a U.S. citizen to have rights, which is the greatness, this is why people want to come to the U.S. because of the freedoms we have. But if you take advantage of those freedoms, and you go to court and they tell you, okay, here's your deportation notice, even though later a court says, well, no, we can't send you back to your home because you feel threatened for your life, you still have those, deportation notices.
That wasn't a coherent argument as to why an illegal immigrant should be deported with no due process. You just actually admitted that he should have due process to some extent. Was he afforded that to some extent? Was he afforded a notice or anything?
He went to court and they
And what did the court say? He gets a withholding order of removal to one country. To one country that he was deported to.
His home country. So then, where are you going to send him? I say we send him.
Can I just clarify? The reason why he was illegally sent to El Salvador and that one country he wasn't supposed to be sent to is because the Trump admin made a mistake of not giving him the due process. If they would have gone through the proper channels, given him a notice, allowed him to prep his documents, then he could have been sent to Gitmo and that would have been different. But I will say...
I give you that because the Trump administration is trying to get wins.
Anthony, can we agree that if someone should be sent to Gitmo or CCOT, we should maybe have a proof that they're an MS-13 gang member beyond a disgraced former cop?
They're here illegally.
That doesn't mean
that's part of the that's your strike there, Adam. You broke the law.
Yeah.
For maybe Gitmo.
Adam, Anthony's acknowledged that people here illegally are entitled to some sort of due process. He's acknowledged that. Mm-hmm. Would you acknowledge that at this point, it's the view of many, not your view perhaps, but it's the view of many of your fellow countrymen and women, that spending more money engaging in extensive due process and hand-wringing over mistakes that are made in the process of trying to correct the situation is not something that gets them super excited?
No serious Democrat is arguing for like 15 million trials, like J.D. Vance said. J.D. Vance, that's a straw man. No serious Democrat is arguing for extensive. You use the word extensive.
Well, but let me ask you this. He was here illegally. Do you think he should be expelled from the United States?
I think that if he was given a notice and an opportunity to respond to that notice.
Yeah, but do you think he should be expelled from the United States if they decided, yes, he's here? There's no dispute. He was here illegally, right?
If he was here illegally, then yeah, we have every right to deport him.
Okay,
so not illegally, deport him through the proper, give him due process.
So what would that have looked like if it had been done correctly?
You can either give him a notice or an opportunity to respond. Now, he had already had the withholding order of removal from a judge in 2019.
Correct.
So if you give him the proper notice, he can present that withholding order of removal so that he's not deported to the one country he's not supposed to be deported to. My contention is he wasn't given the notice. He wasn't given an opportunity to respond. He was deported before he was able to show.
But if they'd flown him to Guatemala the same day they flew him to El Salvador, and the Guatemalans put him in prison, what would your position be?
That the Trump administration did everything right. We wouldn't be hearing about this story because that means the Trump admin was using due process.
Well, but Guatemalans put him in prison. He didn't commit a crime.
I mean, he's in the jurisdiction of another country at that point. I don't.
But wouldn't you say the United States shouldn't have sent him to Guatemala without some assurances that they wouldn't put him in prison?
You're presupposing that he was found to be an MS-13 gang member. I mean,
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I'm saying under the exact circumstances.
If they sent him to Guatemala, then yeah, and he went straight to a prison, that would be bad, actually, yeah. But I wouldn't call it illegal, no. Morally, that'd be bad, but illegally, no. There's a difference between me morally thinking you shouldn't send him into a prison and me saying the Trump admin illegally violated a withholding order of removal.
Right. Okay. Anthony, thank you. Grateful to you for the conversation. Appreciate
Thank you, Anthony. Sorry, I got heated. I do appreciate that.
No, that's all right. It's all good. It wasn't as heated as it might have been. Adam, what would you like to say in closing?
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you for coming back.
To be 100% honest, I got invited on like 2 hours ago, so I didn't know we were doing a whole show together. So I hope we performed well. I hope we provided some entertainment. At the very bare minimum, I hope that people in the audience got to hear some arguments about due process or about the lack of habeas petition granted to some of these people that they wouldn't have heard otherwise, even if it got argumentative at times.
And I totally agree. And I really do. Maybe I'm not reading the room right, but I'm looking at a lot of faces. I really do think that you made people think twice about their current position. I might be wrong. I might be reading the room wrong, but I'm very grateful to you for doing that because you did it in a way that was, learned and educated and calm and people in MAGA claim to care, and I think do care a lot about individual rights and civil liberties and the greatness of America. And we're a great enough country to not sacrifice our values even during a time of crisis. And this is a time of crisis. So I think that's important. Yes, sir.
I don't know if this is like breaking one of your norms, but can I respond to a comment?
Yes, sir.
Someone said, Adam says two things. No Dem is expecting 15 million court proceedings. And then Adam says, the Constitution says everyone deserves due process. Due process does not equal a court hearing.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. Due
Yes.
process
And you've
can
made
equal
that.
notice. Yeah.
You've made it
You
super
said
clear.
both, so which is it, man? I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah,
I
all
think
right.
that throughout this whole thing, no one's been able to say any evidence that Kilmore is actually an MS-13 gang member.
Yeah. Don't call him Kilmore and don't read the chat. Those would be my two pieces of advice.
True.
Adam, very grateful to you always. Thank you for coming on short notice. Please come back regularly. And again, if people want to see your work, where can they go?
Just look up Adam Mockler online. Love you, man. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Very, very grateful to you. Thank you for coming back. All right, everybody. Let me tell you about a few things. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Eastern time, it would be the morning meeting, Sean, Dan, and I, to take you through the day. And might have something special, so don't miss it. Then tomorrow, my show, 6 o'clock Eastern time, right back here. We have some great guest books, but I can't tell you who they are currently. Earlier in the day, the first episode of my podcast. Oh, Adam owes me an answer about why my podcast has moved up the charts because I don't understand it. Earlier in the day, the first episode of my podcast on the Megyn Kelly Network called Next Up. My guest, Senator Ted Cruz, will join, plus Mark Caputo of Axios, and my friend Emma Jo Morris, formerly of the New York Post, will be on. So you can watch it on YouTube on Next Up, or you can listen to it on any podcast platform. So that's tomorrow. It'll drop in the middle of the afternoon. Then I'll be back at 6 o'clock. Then at 7 tomorrow night, Michael Moynihan with a great episode of the Moynihan Report. Will Creeley of FIRE. FIRE is an organization that defends the First Amendment and individual rights and speech. If you're not familiar with their work, please check it out. They're the sponsor of the Moynihan Report. And Will Creeley is an incredibly compelling and very smart man. So join Michael and Will tomorrow. Everything you want to know about free speech, but we're afraid to ask. That's funny. Tomorrow night at 7 o'clock Eastern time, right after this program ends. Grateful to you all for watching. Grateful again to Adam for joining and for the folks who ask questions. And I will see you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Eastern time. Good night.